If you're going to be selling your home here in the Bay Area, you've come to the right video. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some timeless tips that will help make sure you sell your home for the highest possible price. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Danny Gould. I'm a local real estate agent, hotel investor, and avid CrossFitter. And over the last decade, I've helped well over 200 families and sold over $250 million worth of residential real estate here in the Bay Area. And in that time, I've helped over 100 home sellers sell their home for the highest possible price. So I understand the levers that we need to pull in order to make sure that we sell for top dollar. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 actionable tips, 3 timeless tips that you can deploy to make sure that you sell your home for the highest possible price. Now, as a seller, there are really 3 things that you should be focused on, 3 levers, if you will, as we're going through the home selling process. And those are marketing, pricing, and negotiation. And so I'm going to give you 1 actionable tip for each individual lever. Now, to go over all of the tips for each of the levers would take hours and hours and hours, and we simply do not have that time on this video. But what I'm going to be giving you today are some of the most impactful tips for each one of those specific levers. So without further ado, let's dive into marketing. When it comes to marketing a home, there are so many different philosophies out there, but there is one philosophy that when I adapted it, it made a tremendous amount of difference in the activity that the home got and ultimately how many offers we were able to procure, and finally, how high we were able to sell the home for. And that is selective showing windows as opposed to having the home available to see 24/7, 365. Now, there are so many agents out there who would coach you or are going to tell you, hey, Mr. Seller, we need to make sure that we leave the home open or have the home open available for showing whenever the buyers want to come see it. And this school of thought makes sense, it can make sense, right? Like you're thinking, okay, well, obviously we want to be accommodating. We want all the buyers to be able to come in. What if they go out of town? We don't want, any buyer to miss out on seeing this home. And while that might seem logical, it's actually the worst possible thing that you could do for your home. Why? Well, in the absence of perceived competition, buyers are not necessarily going to be willing to offer the highest and best price that they would be willing to offer if they were in the presence of competition. Let me explain. So let's say that you have 2 buyers. One buyer comes in and sees it on a Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. with their agent. Well, at Wednesday at 10 a.m., there are no other buyers there at the property. And so there is a perceived lack of competition. Now, even if the market is white hot, right? Even if there's a ton of buyers out there who are looking for properties and they know that, their attention is flowing to different things. They're thinking, well, I wonder what the seller would take for this house. I wonder how many other buyers are going to be writing offers, but their attention isn't necessarily on the competition, right? Versus a buyer that comes in and sees it in the selective showing window where there are 5, 10, maybe 15 other parties at the house at that same time. Well, all of a sudden that buyer's attention is, oh my gosh, there are a ton of other buyers here at this house right now, and that means I'm going to need to pay top dollar. So here's what I know is that there is a price range that every home sells in, and my job is to get us at the very high end of that price range. So in order to get us at the very high end of the price range, that means we need to raise the floor, right? Because the only way to raise the ceiling is to raise the floor. Okay. And so in order to raise the floor, well, what do we have to do? We have to create an experience where all of the buyers understand the amount of competition that they are going to be up against when writing an offer on your home. And the best way for them to understand it is for them to experience it firsthand. And so my team has a different philosophy. We say, hey, we're going to limit showings to a couple of windows during the week and weekend that the home is on the market. And in those windows, we're going to start stacking buyers, right? So that when a buyer comes in, there are several other parties in the home at the same time. Now, does that mean that we are not accommodating whatsoever? If a buyer has a random situation where they can't make it, maybe they were in New York all week, on business, and they're flying in and they're coming in early just to see the house because they want to see it before the offer deadline. Of course, we make exceptions for those types of things. But, in the absence of a very good excuse, we are going to start funneling these individuals into these certain showing windows. And by doing it this way, we are creating that sense of competition for the buyer. They don't have to imagine it anymore. They are experiencing it and they are living in that reality. And in doing so, right, those 2 buyers the one that is in the absence of competition, right? At 10 a.m. going to see it with their agent. That same buyer comes and sees it instead during a showing window where there's 7 other parties at the property at the same time. Which one do you think is more likely to offer a higher price from the start? Probably this buyer, right? The one that saw it in the presence of competition. And that is exactly what I mean by raising the floor, right? Because if we raise the collective floor of the offers that are coming in, we raise the collective ceiling. And so that is the purpose of the selective showing window strategy, as opposed to just allowing the buyers to see it whatever time suits them, right? And I certainly understand the notion of being accommodating, right? And we are accommodating in extraordinary circumstances. But let me tell you this, if a buyer is very interested in your home and they're the kind of buyer that's going to pay the highest possible price, they are 1000% coming to see it during one of those selective showing windows, right? So don't, allow, the thought of like, oh, what if we lose out on this one buyer? If they're not willing to come during those times, they're not our buyer, I promise you. There's someone else that's going to be willing to pay more than them. 100% of the time. Great. Well, that moves us into pricing. That is the next lever that we can pull on. When you price your home, you're not saying, hey, this is what I would sell it for. You're saying, this is the price that I'm using to invite the most number of buyers possible while still honoring the home, right? What we want to do is we want to create a pricing strategy where we honor the home, but don't disinvite any of the buyers that could potentially pay you the highest possible price for your home, right? And so in there, it's part art, part science. But the tip that I'm going to be giving you is to partner with someone that has the ability to test the market for you. Now, what does that mean? Well, I have access to a very unique software. And this software pulls from several databases around the Bay Area of home buyers, okay? And so what we can do is actually see, hey, your property at 123 Main Street. So every time I go talk to a seller like yourself, we live at 123 Main Street, you have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home, right? So we input that address into this software, and we also put the price that we plan on listing it at into the software. And what it does is it returns to us the number of buyers right now in real time in the Bay Area who are looking for a home like yours in your neighborhood at that price point. Okay, now, here's the cool thing. We can also start to see what changing the price does to the number of buyers that would be showing your property, right? Because we understand this is the 21st century. Zillow, Redfin, all of these different websites. Buyers are using these websites and they typically set a low and a high bound, right? To say, hey, I want to buy a home between $1.8 and $2.3 million. That's my price range. Awesome. Well, we need to make sure that we are capturing the most number of eyeballs, right, for your home. And there is an art and a science to this, but the science part has actually become a lot easier with this tool, because we can now see in real time, hey, if we lower the price by $200,000 from the last comp, let's say the last comparable sold for 2.2. All right, well, this data shows us that if we list it for 1.999, the number of eyeballs increases by 23%. That is really good data for us to have. So my rule of thumb, generally speaking, is if it increases our visibility by about 7% per 100,000, that's the range that we want to be in, 6 to 7% per 100,000. So if we lower it by 200,000 and we're only getting like 5% more eyeballs, that is not a good return on investment, because we've lowered the floor by 200 grand, but we've only, achieved a 5% increase in visibility, right? So we want to see for every like 200 grand, $250,000, like a 12 to 17% bump in visibility, right? That's kind of like the sweet spot. And if we're at 20% plus, that is huge. And that means it is very much worth the investment, right? Because we want to think about this as an investment. We are investing $200,000 into the invitation because we think we're going to be able to get $300,000 to $350,000 or $400,000 back, right? So this is a return on investment conversation and a visibility conversation, because pricing is an invitation, right? And that's really what we want to remember at the end of the day. And a tool like that really helps. Now, if you don't have access to a tool like that, you can text the word test the market plus your property address. That's test the market plus your property address to the number down below. And me and my team will get that custom report for your specific address at the price that you're looking to sell your home at. Happy to do that for you free of charge. Great. Well, that leads us into the final point here of this video, which is negotiations. What is the actionable tip that I can provide you when it comes to negotiating the highest possible price for your home? Well, first of all, let me just say this. Negotiation is by far the highest artistry part of this entire process, right? You might think, oh, you have to be a great artist and everything to be a great marketer. Not necessarily, right? I know a lot of great agents who are great marketers, but not really they don't really have that artistry in them to go out and negotiate the highest possible price. And so knowing how to orchestrate a successful negotiation is 1000% a skill, and it is something that not a lot of agents in the Bay Area have. But just to kind of piggyback on top of that, the tip that I would give every seller out there, regardless of whether they work with me or not, is to really ensure that the agent that you work with, if you're not working with me, is going to commit to you to countering every single buyer that comes in, right? And I'll tell you a story and why this is so impactful. There's a home that I sold a couple of years ago, and the home, we ended up getting 14 offers on the property. The highest offer was $20,000 above the last comp. So my clients were ecstatic, right? They said, Danny, we've already set a record in this neighborhood. This is great. Thank you so much. We'll sign the offer. I said, no, not so fast. Because here's one thing that I know. No matter what price a buyer comes in at, the one universal truth is that no one ever pays the most they're willing to pay right off the bat. No one ever offers their highest and best right off the bat. When have you ever gone into a car dealership and said, hey, Mr. Car Salesman, can you just take my check here? This is the most I'm willing to pay right away. No, of course not. You're going to throw in a number that's probably a lot lower than you're ultimately willing to pay. And that is the exact same philosophy that the majority of Bay Area home buyers use. They might be paying over list price, but are they truly paying the most that they're willing to pay? The answer is no. And so my job is to figure out how much more room is there. And so my commitment to my seller was we're going to counter every single buyer that comes in. And so we actually went through a series of counters back and forth and back and forth. And I will spare you the details, but after all was said and done, after we went through a couple rounds of negotiations and counters back and forth, we ended up getting what I like to call the last star standing, and they paid $120,000 over the highest comp. So that negotiation made us $100,000 more. Now, why do I say counter every offer instead of just counter the top few? Well, it ended up being the third lowest offer that came up the most to win the house. So you might be thinking to yourself, wow, that's crazy, right? Well, here's what I know is that in this market, we are playing a guessing game, right? And some buyers are better at guessing than others. But just because you're a good guesser doesn't mean that you are the most willing to pay the highest price. It just means that you are closest to guessing correctly the first time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the deepest pocketbook, right? And so sometimes the worst guessers are actually the ones that have the highest pocket or the deepest pockets, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that all the buyers have a chance to step up. And that's exactly what I did. We went back and we countered every single buyer that came through. And we ended up getting the third lowest offer up $120,000 over the last comparable sale. I think from their original price to where they were at the end, it was like almost $160,000 or $170,000 from where they were originally to where they ended up having to get to in order to win the house. And they went there. Now, the highest offer only came up an additional $40,000. So this whole process ended up netting my clients an additional $60,000 than they would have gotten if they had only countered the top offer, right? And they probably wouldn't have even got that because it was the threat of going up against all these other buyers that really caused this buyer to step it up an extra $40K, right? But at the end of the day, the moral of the story is a few things. Number one, there's a lot of agents out there that'll tell you, countering, maybe we counted the top few or whatever, maybe the top 1, 2, or 3, or I don't really believe in counters because I don't want to scare any buyer off, but we'll go ahead and we can verbally negotiate with some of these buyers. And then, whichever one, tells me that they're going to come up the most, that's the one that we'll award the house to, right? Well, not only is that bad for you, it's just weak. There's a lot of agents out there who are super weak in this market, and I'd have nothing to do with them if I were you, because they're not there to get you the highest possible price. They're just there to get in and get out and get on with their life, right? And they're going to collect their commission. But if you want somebody that's actually going to fight for you and help and fight for your money, fight for you like a tiger, and go out there and win negotiations time in and time out, you got to partner with someone that understands that the power in negotiation is the ability to walk away, but the skill is in never having to. And I've proven that time and time again to my clients because, in that negotiation, sure, a less skilled negotiator probably could have lost a lot of money for their client in that situation, right? Because they just wouldn't know how to handle that and wouldn't know how to manufacture this kind of situation to begin with, nor would they know how to orchestrate it once they actually got there. Like, hey, how do I move all these pieces together to make sure that we're maximizing the final sales price, but not scaring away any of the buyers in the process, right? And that is an art, that is a true art, and it's something that not every agent can do. But the moral of the story is you want to make sure that you give every buyer an opportunity to step up, because you really don't know which one of those buyers is going to pay you the highest possible price. And number two, don't just focus on the top few, right? Don't just focus on the top few. Focus on everyone, because the top few might be better guessers, but they might not be the most willing to pay you what you want or pay you what they need to pay you in order to win the house. And so there are so many lessons in that negotiation, but I hope that you learned something from that example and from that tip, because it really, I mean, can be for some people a six-figure tip right there. Now, for every seller that I work with, we create a custom marketing strategy, a custom tailored strategy for you and for your property, because every home is different. And we want to reverse engineer a marketing plan and strategy that is going to attract the kinds of buyers that we know are the most likely to buy your house. And then from there, we can deploy our pricing and our negotiation tactics on top of that. But it really starts with that foundational level of marketing and really drawing in the kinds of buyers that we know are most likely to buy your home. And so if you're interested in me meeting with you and creating that custom strategy together, you can text the word consult to the number down below. That's consult plus your property address, I should say. Consult plus your property address to the number down below. And I will reach out to you personally to set up a time for me to come over and create that strategy with you so that we can get you from where you are now to where you want to be with the most amount of money in your pocket, because that is really what I'm here for. I'm not here to just sell the house. I'm here to sell it for the highest possible price. I pride myself on that. I'm super passionate and serious about what I do. And I do it for you. I do it because I want to make sure that my clients never want to buy or sell without me again, that I'm in their real estate life forever. And I understand that it happens by knocking it out of the park for you on the very first one. So with that being said, if you've made it this far in the video and you are not yet subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, give me a thumbs up while you're at it. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me get in front of more Bay Area home sellers just like yourself. This is Danny Gold, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Selling Silicon Valley, and I will catch all of you in the next video.